Context engineering is the biggest buzzword right now, and I actually have the king of context engineering, whether you believe it or not. And his name is Eric Provencher. And Eric is actually the founder of this app called RepoPrompt. And for those who don't know, the OGs of AI coding, Eric came up with this really, really brilliant app and a way to actually talk with your code base and grab as much context as possible and allow you to rearrange things so that way you can get the most out of these language models. Whether you believe it or not, whenever you use any of these AI coding apps like Cursor, Windsurf, you name it, they're grabbing your code base and kind of rearranging and grabbing those pieces out, and then they're sending those things over to the language model so that the language model can give a response. And so you'll notice sometimes after various updates that you may not get the output that you really want. So Eric had this problem and said, I should make an app for this. I want to see the tokens that I send over to the language model. And if I rearrange my responses and do things in a different way, I can actually get a better response from this. And this was something that, he discovered many moons ago, almost like, it's probably like a year ago, but in AI, it probably feels like 7 years. And so I'm extremely delighted to have Eric on the show because we're going to talk about RepoPrompt, context engineering, MCPs, and many more things. And since this is a live stream and you're actually watching this right now, feel free to drop any of the comments. And we're going to go ahead and have a Q&A section towards the very end of this episode. So I'm going to make sure I go through those. I'm going to prioritize my members first. So big shout outs. This whole stream is powered by my members and people who support the channel. So yeah, without further ado, Eric, thank you so much and welcome to the show. I'm excited to have you on.
Thank you. And what a great intro. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, man. You have really been cooking with your app. And for those who don't know, RepoPrompt, repoprompt.com. Tell me a little bit more about kind of your app and as far as like latest updates and kind of what's been happening in this world of like context engineering and stuff.
Yeah. I mean, so as you were saying, like I started this app a long time ago at this point. It has been actually like just about exactly a year since I started working on it. And at the time, the space was very different. Like Cursor was very nascent compared to where it is now. The best tool, like Sonnet 3.5 had just released when I started working on it. And that's when it like the timing became better and it was easier to kind of work, with like low latency responses, and you can get a lot more done in a moment. And the thing is, at the time, the only way to get like a good way to use the full context window of Sonnet was by using, the Claude web app. Like you would go onto the Claude website and like you would put your prompts in and you would get a response. And like that was the only way to use the full 200K tokens. If you were using Cursor, you were at the time stuck to like 30K tokens or something like that. So like it just wasn't the full experience of the model. And like that's why I built this app. So the app was very simple at the time. Like you just open up a folder, you select the files you want, you type in instructions, and I would take that and put it in a big XML block that I would paste to your clipboard. You can paste that in, and you would get good responses. And for a while, I would just code that way. I would just like see what the model said. I would go in and I would like manually paste responses in. And then that was the second problem. It's like, okay, well, how can I get the responses from Claude back into my code? And so I started working on a feature for this diff apply stuff. And there's a whole XML feature that's in there now that is still great. But now, like the latest thing with everything supporting MCP is being able to just have AI agents talk to the app directly. And so a lot of the features I've been building over the last year are now fully like exposed over the MCP tooling, so that you can have Claude kind of use the app as if I was. So it can select files, it can build prompts, it can write my prompts, it could access the file tree. It even has some more powerful tools like search. That are like what you get with Claude Code, and some of it in some ways it's actually a little bit better because I can actually have multiple repos open and have it like reference all kinds of stuff across my repo with its search, and even using the chat directly. So I can have like O3 in the app, and Claude Code can go have a conversation as if it's like invoking ChatGPT itself. And it's like delegating work to another model.
Hold up. You're cooking super hard right now, and there's literally a 5-alarm fire in this kitchen. We need to kind of unpack
That's
I
fine.
think
I've been going on. You've been telling me what
yeah,
to do, so I'm giving you the digest. Yeah.
Bro. Okay. For those who are saying, he's basically saying that with his app, when you have it loaded up, you're going to have your code base loaded up and everything. But one of the things that has changed in recent times from what had happened before, and what makes this really killer today, is the fact that you said now an agent can go into your app and it can reason over multiple code bases. And so for those who aren't familiar, RepoPrompt will let you allow you to select basically as many code bases as you want to kind of load into its workspace. And then from there, you can actually select the language models that you want to have via either an API, via copying a prompt and putting it into a chat window or something like that. But beyond that, like in the agentic workflow, you can also have various models apply changes to your code as well. And so you don't have to be stuck with one specific model. It could be as simple as like, just doing one single API call and having a chat, or you can actually go into very little details of saying, I want these specific models to do those different things. And those tunables are actually done by you, the engineer. And so if you really want an extreme power tool, you have this in this one type of thing. So tell me more a little bit about this agentic workflow that's kind of new. It's new to a lot of workspaces and coding things. And to me, a lot of people are talking and trying to find alternatives to agentic coding because they don't want to pay $200 a month, right? So like, tell me more about kind of what this looks like for your app.
Yeah, I mean, so the key thing is right now, if you want really good value, you have to kind of pay Anthropic for the Claude Code just like a Claude subscription. You could use Pro if you want just like the $20 a month to use Sonnet, or you go to Max if you want to get into the weeds with Claude Code. And that can be expensive, like $100 or $200 a month. But there's really no alternative to paying them to kind of get a good agentic workflow, because Sonnet is really the only good agentic model at the moment. So what does that mean? Like, what is an agentic model? Like, the thing is, like, the way these tools work is it's an agentic loop is very simple, really. Like, you just give some tools, like a bucket of tools, like a toolbox to a model, and you're like, here's your tools, here's my prompt, get to work. And what is it going to do? So it's going to look at the tool set. Okay, what tools do I have here? Like, so in RepoPrompt, I give it like, okay, you can pull out the file tree. So what's the file tree? Like, we've already loaded your repo. We can go ahead and see, all the files and folders in your directory. Okay, like, it gives a good idea of what the project is. Okay, so from there, okay, so Claude is like, okay, let's go look around. Like you asked about, this prompt feature. Okay, well, what files seem like they might be related to the prompt feature? Oh, well, let's do a search, and it'll do a search, and it'll figure out which files are where, and then the search will return, okay, well, here's some lines of code that are referenced in your thing. Let's go read those lines of code with a little bit of extra window, and then all of a sudden, it has an idea of like what's going on in your code, and it has some idea of like how things are working, and then it can go ahead and actually make changes to your code. So you're just giving it the tools to go discover what it needs to know, and then actually making changes. And the thing that's really interesting with Claude versus other models is that it's really built to figure that out itself. Whereas, like, if I'm using O3, I find it performs better if I and give it the tools and then it reasons over it. Because if you're letting it kind of discover things, sometimes it'll do an okay job. But like, Claude is the one that is like really engineered and reinforcement learned to make sure that it's able to call tools very precisely and well. And it doesn't like being given too much context. It's like, no, I don't want what you gave me. Like, I just want to go find what I need to find. So it validates, it double checks itself. It'll read things multiple times. So it's not super efficient sometimes, but yeah, that's the thing. So yeah, I just want to give that primer there. Yeah,
that's quite amazing. And if you have any demos, I would love to see anything. Then you got pulled up. Maybe we can kind of get that screen share going on. And in the meantime, I can kind of share a little bit for those who are wondering. This is kind of the RepoPrompt website, and actually Eric has some actual videos and stuff like that are on here. So talking about the visual context engineering, there's like a cool clipboard XML workflow. There's a lot of different workflows, and it kind of gets all over the place. And the AI context builder is kind of something that you're talking a little bit about just now, right? About how it kind of going into your code and figuring out that context. And for me, like the prompt library is actually pretty awesome, because this is where you can actually get those architect prompts and the engineering prompts. And I actually have a demo video where I'm actually comparing, Grok versus 01 Pro at that time, and then the other models. And I like to use this because I actually can feed the language model, which is hungry with all these tokens, all of the direct input into like Grok and O1. And at that time, Grok actually took the top spot for architecting a code base. Like for, I'm going to make a database. What are all the different relationships and all the different entity diagrams? And it just really took right over. So yeah, this is really, really cool. Let me go ahead and see if I can get your screen up on here. And I think it might require Chrome on your side. And then the screen share type of thing. Yeah, I forgot
I'm
about
in
that.
Idea right now. I guess it doesn't work there.
Oh,
no.
It should work. Yeah, it's a Chromium-based browser, so should
Yeah,
work.
I don't see the button on my end.
To share screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I see. Okay. Yeah, maybe we have to come back. Whoops. Let me.
All right. Let me see.
Okay, it's all good. This is live, folks, so that's how you know we're cooking live. Yeah. No, it's all good. So yeah, and let me see if I can pull up RepoPrompt on my end too, and then kind of have that in the demo here. Kind of do some things.
Yeah, I've got it ready to rock if ever I can share my screen. But let me see.
I wonder if you can open a new browser. Yeah,
that's what I'm going to do now.
Oh, okay, cool.
I'm going to go into Chrome Direct.
Chrome. All right.
There we go.
Cool. Let me just go ahead and let you in here.
Oh, yeah.
Cool. I'll have you take over the guest one here, and then I'll take over. Yeah, it's like you never left.
Okay, we're good. We're ready to rock now. Okay.
Yeah. Sounds pretty good.
My screen. Okay.
Dang, that was pretty smooth actually. Appreciate everyone for hanging out with the technical assistants here. I'm just kind of updating my last screen there. Perfect, so that I get your name. And then what's great about this whole thing is that I'm able to then just get this window up, and then I'm going to go ahead and assign this into this spot. And here we are. Here's your screen. This is great.
Okay, great. So just to context here, so what I did. So I've got the RepoPrompt open here. It doesn't have anything selected. It's just got my website open. And then I added the RepoPrompt project in here as well. So I just said like, hey, can you make a call? Just take a look at what's here. And it was like, okay, great. So I got a really good understanding just from the file tree of like the website and the app. So like, I can ask it like, can you take a look at the documentation specifically around MCP and read the code in my repo to update those docs with the latest tooling is where most of the action lies. All right, so I can have it get to work. So it's able to see all of the repos I've got open. So right now it's doing a search. So you can look for paths. It can look for content as well. So you see like Claude likes to make multiple searches. It finds results. You can see like it's getting all these file paths, the relevant line in code. It's making some selections. So it just updated the UI actually, which is interesting.
Wow.
And now it's able to bulk read files because of the file selection. Yeah, sometimes you'll see like actually like the UI updates before Claude because it's doing stuff and there's a little lag on the Claude Desktop, which is pretty funny. There you go. See, it's just getting to work. Like it's just using the app like you would getting to work. It's finding the relevant tools. So see here now it's like reading code about RepoPrompt specifically. Before it was reading code about the website. So now it's a good understanding of the current code base and the website. Oh, now it's actually like I don't want to do the work myself, so it's asking O3 and it's set to O3 high, which is probably a bit intense. Yeah, so so sometimes it will try and like use things kind of like a little bit funny. Like there's still some prompting to kind of figure out in terms of the best way for it to use the chat tools. But like I do find this pattern where it will try and delegate work. Like Claude is very much like, oh, I don't really want to do that work. I'll just ask the AI model to do it. But like the thing with this is that it needs to kind of make sure that the context is sufficient. So now it's just kind of gave it a bit of a vague task, which is not optimal. But
Ah.
yeah, like you can see like it's able to kind of use both models. It's able to do the file editing work, and then Claude can review what was changed, and it can actually make further edits. So Claude has its own editing tools here. And yeah, so you can read like all these things. So yeah, that was auto applied, the chat completed, and then Claude should be able to see the response there and continue from there. Yeah.
Whoa.
So,
So
so
kind
it
of
was
like
able to read.
break this down
Yeah.
in like slow motion from the beginning. Like you have Claude Desktop set up, and that's
Yeah.
configured with your RepoPrompt MCP, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So Claude Desktop becomes like an MCP hub. So you can actually have different tools. So one I actually really like is the Xcode build MCP. A lot of people like Context 7. And the thing that's really great with this is that, basically you're able to make Claude Desktop into Claude Code, as it can get to work on doing, pretty much everything Claude Code can.
Oh,
Because it's able
wow.
to kind of read files, do edits, and do all that work. And so you're able to kind of turn this just into your hub. And Claude Code is great. Not everyone wants to use a terminal though, and the terminal, you have like one directory at a time. So there's some limitations there. But yeah, no, just being able to give it the tools it needs to work. Like Claude Desktop is actually a very powerful agent like driver at the moment.
Oh, I had no clue, dude. So you're
Yeah,
saying I can use Claude Desktop, right? Meow.
yeah,
Claude Desktop in this whole piece, and Claude Desktop is the MCP that connects to RepoPrompt. So that's going to basically sort of behave like Claude Code. But
hmm,
you're saying Claude is really good. It could already start acting like someone who is, like what Claude Code already does, and says like, oh, I need
yeah,
to do this coding task. Oh, I see that MCP server. I'm gonna go get
yeah.
everything I need to do, and it follows the same agentic workflow
Yeah,
because you're
it's the
using the best
model,
model.
and
Yeah.
they prompt Claude pretty well. The thing you won't get with Claude Desktop in this workflow is like just having like rule files and certain things which are quite useful. So I think there's some scaffolding to be built around that.
Okay.
Um, but yeah, it's funny. Like I'm seeing as it's using this now, it just really likes to kind of just
Delegate.
delegate the work out to O3. Like it doesn't want to do the work itself, which is pretty funny. You
Whoa.
can turn off certain tools. Like if I were to turn off the chat tools, then and try it again, like it would just kind of just use it directly. But see, it's telling it exactly what to do. It's like do these edits. Okay, great. It doesn't want to handle those things, so it's able to kind of follow along. And because RepoPrompt updates its files right away, like there's just a file watcher. It's able to update everything, so everything kind of stays in sync. And what's cool
Is
is
there
with the
a
chat
way to
here,
make
it's
your windows a
Mhm.
little bit bigger or something like that? Maybe I think some folks are saying,
Yeah,
yeah, on that side.
yeah. I don't know if like this font scaling is not gonna. Let me
Oh yeah,
scale up the font actually. Appearance. If I go large,
large.
like
Yeah,
this on this,
yeah.
there we go.
And does that one do
Um,
Command Plus or something for Claude Desktop? Yeah,
there we go.
perfect. Okay, cool. Yeah, thank you for the comment, by the way, Carlos,
Yeah,
and some other folks. Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So
Oh
yeah, I
my
mean, like
goodness.
at the end of the day, like yeah, it's just gonna keep going. Like,
Whoa.
that's the thing. Like, Sonnet just keeps working as long. Okay, now it's finished finally. So you're gonna see what's this cool. You're gonna see the prompt just update dynamically. It's telling me what it did, so I can review it. Um, Perfect. There you go. So it got to work. Told me everything it did. Um, yeah. So just updated my site. It did quite a lot of stuff actually. Um, I didn't finish updating there, but yeah, like that's the thing. So you can give it a bunch of tools, and being able to have leverage different models is really useful. The thing that like a lot of folks will say right now, in the current state of like agentic tooling, as I was mentioning, Sonnet is the one that people use a lot for agentic tool calling, because it can read the tools, it knows the description, it can handle them properly, like it won't error too much. Like a lot of folks are having issues with Gemini CLI at the moment because
Right.
Gemini is messing up like the name of the tool or the parameter order or like different things like that, like that are just kind of being screwed up, and it's just not handling them as well. Um, and so the thing that you want to do is try and find ways to get Claude to be able to use the intelligence of other models. And the only other tool I've seen right now that's kind of doing that is AMP, which has like an Oracle tool they just released.
Yes, I was
And
going
that
to
that's
actually
great.
ask you about that because there's
Mhm.
that
Yeah.
planning feature, and have you used it? And then
Yes.
are there differences, and what do you feel like? Um,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So AMP's planning tool, basically, I have to see what they kind of context they give it, but I think they just kind of have, Claude prep a prompt and kind of go ahead and invoke it. What's nice with the setup here is that because there's this like selected files feature, like Claude can and you saw it do it early on, like as it's like starting to manage selection and picking which files to update. It can build a prompt with the context, so it can assemble like, okay, I'm going to add some of these files. So as like a user, I can go ahead and add some of these things here,
Wow.
and pick these files. And you see like there's like a prompt here. And what's great is that then when it does request plan, it uses all the context that's shared plus the context of the instructions to then trigger a plan from O3 to get some a bird's eye view to kind of get it unstuck when it's like dealing with tricky issues. But when you have a chat situation here, like you can see like basically Claude is having a multi-turn conversation, and it's using this like ChatGPT to kind of select the files that are relevant, and then kind of going through and making edits to the code. And that's just like a new kind of thing that I don't think anyone else is doing right now, where you have like a chat that's optimized for O3, where the context is kind of in like a well assembled block, and then
Yes.
you have Claude that's running the agent loop, and it's able to kind of work with both in their preferred environment. Like right at the start, I was like, Claude needs to find its own context. It needs to discover things for itself, but like O3 needs to be spoon fed a little bit more to do its best work. So finding the best ways to mix and match these models and these tools, like that's the secret sauce right now. Like that's the thing you got to really work
Dude,
on.
I'm still blown away just on this single concept. Like first just
Yeah.
MCPs, right? And watching one model talk as Claude Desktop. And so the advantage that maybe you could get using this RepoPrompt setup that you maybe couldn't using something like AMP is that if you're paying Claude a subscription for Claude Max, right? Like $100 a month or $200 a month, calling an MCP tool call to go across, you're going to pay the API cost for OpenAI, O3 or whatever, but you're still having the intelligence of one model, which is Claude, right? And so it's just doing this loop back saying, okay, I'm going to send you back everything that I've changed. So you're not eating the context as far as like all these tokens for consuming, the entire code base. That's actually done on the O3 side, right? It's the main model, which is Claude Sonnet or Claude Opus, whatever the Claude things you do, has just given the tiny instructions to RepoPrompt as an MCP and saying, hey, I want you to use the O3 model and see if you can accomplish this task. And so from what it looked like in your chat window, it was kind of building that conversation separately and not consuming that
Yep.
back into the main. So you're not eating up your limits in some ways too. It's a
Yeah.
really interesting
So
approach. Wow.
yeah. And the thing that is most expensive for tokens is all of these tool calls, right? Like that is extremely expensive, because every tool call, if you're doing this over API, you're sending a new request, and you have caching, which reduces the cost of that request, by 75%, but it's still 25%. So each tool call for all the previous tokens, you're paying again for those tokens. And so if you don't have a subscription like Claude, where that's kind of just free, you're paying a lot. It could cost you like, in some cases, up to $50 a day, depending on how you're using it. That's why everyone's kind of going and trying to use these Claude subscriptions, because like it's really the only way to get a lot of use out of Claude, because it's just such an expensive way to work. Like it burns tokens. And I think the future is having really good small agentic driver models that are able to do this tool calling to kind of figure things out, and then just having smarter models kind of do engineering work that is then looped back in. And like I really think like this flow of having O3 do some work, that it gets validated, and there's this back and forth between different models. Like I think that's just like a way to kind of add kind of gasoline to this fire. Like I think going forward though, you still like, we have to be careful with all of this, because you know this tool, like Claude can go and it'll do a lot of work, and sometimes it does great work, but often it does things that are a little sidetracked. It'll keep going for longer than maybe it should. It'll try and add things that maybe aren't necessary. So you do want to stay in this driver's seat in review. And one of the things I'm working on actually is a way for like every time Claude makes a file edit through this tool, that I can
Mm.
go ahead and review the diff. So like if I open this up here, I can see this is the diff that Claude did for this file.
Ooh.
And I want to be able to like review those changes every time, just as it goes through.
Mm.
so there's a lot to work there's a lot of work into figuring out the right UX for like staying in control of the whole process. And I think like interactive code reviews as Claude is tool calling, that's going to be like a really nice unlock for that.
Okay. Yeah. And for those folks who are just joining into the stream or maybe kind of catching up a little bit, maybe just give us a quick summary of kind of what RepoPrompt is. And somebody was just asking, like, what's the difference from this versus GitHub Copilot and agents or something like that?
Mhm. Yeah. So, I mean, RepoPrompt, first and foremost, it's like a context engineering tool, and it's made to help you. It's made to help you pick and understand what about your prompt and your context is important for a given task. And when you're selecting files, a lot of folks will use things like RepoMix or other tools where they basically just zip up a whole GitHub into a string. And that's nice if you have like super huge context windows, which people like Gemini for. But in reality and practice, like giving spurious info to a model is just not going to help you solve problems. Like it's going to give it a ton of extra, garbage to deal with. And there's a term recently that's been coming around called context rot, where like there's like a mistake in the context, or there's something wrong in the context, and the model, because of the way that they have these attention mechanisms, they kind of glob onto those errors. And you like, that's why like if you're chatting with the model and you're like,
Oh,
hey, like, can you fix this problem? And you're like, oh no, that wasn't the fix. This is the fix, or do something else. It'll kind of loop over itself, trying to like go in the same direction. And that's why people are like, no, no, actually just roll back, try again and start again, because you want to chop off the rot. You want to kill out the bad answer, redirect it from a higher point and have it go in a different track. So like being able to control the context window, all that stuff, that's like a huge thing that I built this app for. Um,
I see.
but as the realities of people wanting to use tools like Claude Code, and have like this kind of full auto driving for coding, like I had to kind of figure out the best ways to kind of give this tool set to a model like Claude. And that's what I've done with the MCP setup, where Claude can use all the tools that you can, read through your files, apply edits with some of my very advanced editing tools, and just handle it like it would. So what's the difference with Copilot agents? Actually, what the funny thing is with this MCP tool, I can actually plug this into Copilot, and it's actually faster to use the RepoPrompt tools to go ahead and edit files than it is to kind of use the built-in Copilot tools. Like the read file tool is able to read a much more at a time. It's able to kind of, the search tool is better versus the code base like embedding stuff that Copilot does. So like you can turn off their tools, just plug in the RepoPrompt tools. And you can keep the ones you want, like the linting stuff with the language server, perfect. Keep those, and then all of a sudden you've got like the RepoPrompt agent in VS Code, which is really nice. And yeah, I think that's what's really cool with this. It's like you're getting a sense of like I'm working on an agent too, and this is like a preview of that, like what it is to work with the RepoPrompt agent in all these different tools using your existing subscriptions.
Whoa, 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 whoa. Okay, lots of alpha that's going on here. So take me through a little bit of that GitHub flow, because you kind of dropped some interesting hints there. Somebody could be paying, I think it's probably like $20 a month or something to have access to this GitHub workflow or GitHub agents or whatever it is.
Hmm.
So if they plug in RepoPrompt to VS Code and have this enabled, they're just using their credits there. Is that kind of what it is? And the
Yeah,
RepoPrompt
that's
is
right.
kind of,
Yeah,
okay. So
yeah.
what
So
that
the RepoPrompt
means, yeah.
tools,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it gives it like the ability to read files, search your code base, your multi-repo setup. It could do apply edits with search replace, which is what Claude Code uses. And it can even do like multi-search replace, where it's doing like a bunch of calls in a single tool. So you're able to get more mileage out of these tool calls. Because I know that Copilot, if you're using Sonnet, for instance, you have a limited number of credits for that. If you're using 4.1, it's different, but 4.1 isn't quite the tool calling model that Sonnet is. Um, so yeah, you're able to kind of use the tools more efficiently, more rapidly, get to your end state, and yeah.
Okay. Let's kind of break down a little bit of this like context engineering concept that has been thrown
Hmm.
around. I think Andre Karpathy is like the one that really is just putting this into the mainstream. And I feel like if you've been working with AI and doing AI codings, you've already kind of have figured some of this out. And then this word is kind of like the thing that everyone's I call them like the McKinsey analysts are kind of starting to unite around, as far as language to toss to their, people who don't do this type of stuff. And so explain a little bit more of like, what this means and what does it really mean to you? Because I feel like you've been working so deeply into this space, and in terms of like rearranging things, and we've all been kind of doing
Mhm.
our own little like workflows. To me, it feels like I stick my little antenna out this way and kind of pray to the AI gods and make sure that I fall into the right, context before I get my
Yeah,
output.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, no, so we'd just love to hear your input on that. Yeah.
Yeah, like so I think like ordering and all that stuff, like it's still very important, especially for reasoning models. So the big thing that I've learned, working with models is that you want to kind of build your prompts in a way that kind of separates instructions from context. I think with agent tooling though, like you kind of have to let go of a lot of things. Like you kind of just have to like vibe a little bit more because the agent kind of just needs to do what it's got to do. So you got to think through your prompt like, okay, well, here's what I think is important. You want to give like hints to where to find things, but you don't want to like kind of give it too much info because when the agent is working in a message, it's going to fill up the context window as it goes. So you don't want to pre-stuff it too much. You want to really stay minimal and lean at the front, just to kind of give it that room to kind of fill up its context with important info. If you're working with other tools though, like if you're on ChatGPT and you want to use O3 Pro or a tool like that, you don't have that ability to kind of have it discover context in the same way. So you have to kind of prepare your things a little bit better. So that's why like selecting your files, like that's like a key thing. In terms of ordering, like I actually have a tool in the RepoPrompt where there's a prompt order menu and you can reorder things. Some models prefer instructions at the top, some at the bottom. Personally, I find it works really well with instructions at the bottom. And you want to separate it from file content. So like you want to have like key XML tags that will kind of say like, this is the files that you're reading. Here's, some code maps, some file tree. Here's my instructions at the bottom. And you can duplicate them. So sometimes duplicating instructions actually helps a lot. So that's an option as well. Um,
Mhm.
so just like like to a fault, I think like with RepoPrompt, I really want to give people the tools they can use to control how they want to try and do things. Like people are always like, oh, I don't like your defaults. I want to do this. Like, there's no shortage of power users out there, and they always want to, be able to change every little thing. So you got to give them those tools. But sometimes it's, becomes a little overwhelming for other people to kind of like deal with that. So yeah.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit more about some of these language models. I know that a lot of people like to quote like the million token context window from Google, and then I was at a dev day last year in October for OpenAI, and Sam Altman on stage asked, "Okay, imagine the context windows go to like 20 million to 100 million, and pretty much like infinite, basically. What type of apps would you build then?" And so like while that's very dreamy right now, talk a little bit more about the actual effectiveness of some of these windows and your
Mhm.
experience using them.
Yeah. Yeah, so I mean, so right now, like if you're using, most of the off-the-shelf tools, like you've got like O3, which has about like 100K tokens. Like they say 200, but actually I discovered recently that when the model reasons, that's like part of the token window. So like if you want to maximize its allocation, you need to reserve 100K tokens for it. So like your whole prompt and output needs to fit in 200K, which is quite limited. So that's why you got to really prep your context, let it cook, and then get a response. Um, if you're using Claude, they have like a full 200K window available on top of the rest of it. That's great, but like Claude's a model that needs a little bit upfront, needs to discover its context, and then kind of it rolls for a while, and then it fills up, and then it does. If you're using Claude Code, you'll see compaction or things like that. There's like all kinds of ways to trim the chat history and do stuff like that to kind of optimize that. And like Claude 4, like it really needs, like it doesn't pay attention to a lot of things as well that are older in the chat. Like that's why like I've seen, I don't know, you've probably seen, all of you listening who've used this, like you'll see like Claude will read a file and then it's like, okay, well actually let me, like I already read that section, but let me reread that little part again just to make sure that I got it right. And it's like rereading the same stuff over and over, and so it's like not making efficient use of its context window because of like just the nature of it. Um so but like effective context window, you were saying as well, and like that's another thing to consider with this, is that like these models are flawed. Like they're not like whatever it says on the tin in terms of like what you have as context window. You can't just like fill up the context window and expect great results. Like you have to be cautious of every bit of information you're giving it, because if you cross certain thresholds, and in many cases that's even around like 32K tokens, the model's just response quality just degrades. Gemini is like the only one that seems to be able to break that kind of, pull, like gravitational pull, and is able to like kind of exceed and go beyond like the 100K, 200K, 500, even about 500K barrier, um, and use it effectively. But even then, like, like it's not perfect, and that model has other flaws in terms of being able to call tools. So it's all a challenging thing. But I think going forward for coders, if you're working with these models, like the thing that is important to look through with like large context windows is the ability for longer running tasks. So as you let Claude work or Gemini CLI work, like you'll see like it's going to read things and then reread them and then look at diffs and then it's going to like keep going, and like if you rely on like summarization, you lose important information. But like having longer context windows, you're able to really kind of let it go longer without having to degrade that data. But even then, like as I was mentioning, context rot is a thing. So if there's errors or bad things that happen, like you still have to do some cleaning. That's actually in the RepoPrompt chat. Like it's not agentic right now, but like I do a lot of work to make sure that the chat history is clean and efficient. Like for instance, like only the latest version of files is sent to the model, so there's not like a long running history of changes that is going to be seen. Like it'll see like what the model wanted to do between file changes, but it's not going to keep like that whole history every time. So it keeps each message kind of tight and focused, which lets it kind of work a lot longer in the same thread.
Wow. Super amazing insights and different, like, I feel like you're so in the weeds of this, and this is super helpful, especially for people who are prompting. And that also means, I guess, if you're using the Claude Desktop, if you're using Claude Code, /clear would create a new chat window basically, or opening a new chat window, that type of thing would basically kind of reset that so you can do the type of thing. And so can you explain a little bit more about like what this behavior of context rotting is, and maybe why some of the language models prefer that in terms of how it goes about these weights and stuff, like maybe at a higher level, right? We don't have to get like super technical, but like why does it keep anchoring on something like that, and we don't even know what that looks like, but like in your experience?
I mean, I think it comes down to like a key like trait, like a key engineering trait of transformers, which is called attention. So like if you're using a language model, attention is that mechanism that like allows the model to focus on bits of context for its response. And like it's not a perfect system, and it's why you'll see as well, like if you give like all of the information in the world, like these models are trained on like all of the information in the world, but they're not able to kind of solve cancer and do things like they're not able to bring their attention to like every single piece of information that exists at the same time when forming an answer. So like when you have a context window, if you have bad data in it, it's gonna get latched on it, because the context window is like it's really short-term working memory. So context rot is that problem where you'll have bad data that's in there, like a failed tool call, or like just like a mistaken reasoning, and the way that it's set up, it will kind of get stuck on that idea, like it's part of its thinking, like it's almost like a subliminal message for it at this point, where it's like it can't escape the idea that's there, and that's so it has to consider it. So like when you do clear and you do certain things like that, like you're removing the data and you're starting from a clean slate, and you're giving it the context and the problem to solve, and you're letting it run. And that's why like you'll see like even some of the Anthropic researchers, they say like treat it like a slot machine, which I really don't love, because I don't like coding as a slot machine as an idea to work. But like you just try your prompt, let it run, and you see what happens, and you can take the result or drop it and try again. Yeah, I mean, that's like a way to work. It is valid. Even OpenAI researchers will say like you run O3 like 10 times and look at the variance in the output. Like there's going to be a lot of variance. And then if you take O3 Pro, like what a lot of folks think it is this just a bunch of O3s? I think they're sequential though, where they'll kind of run through the problem and then run through it again and then run through it again. And then that's why it takes so long, but then you get like a much more reasoned response at the end. So
that's actually
like
the
trying
Anthropic theory, I think, is that a lot of the researchers say the more tokens you generate, the closer you're going to get to some type of truth to verify. And so that's kind of why that's actually why a lot of everything about them is just about the tokens, just produce the tokens.
Burning tokens. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I
Oh
mean,
my
I have
goodness.
mixed feelings about that personally. Like, I think like if you're in a world where like you work at a big lab like Anthropic, and your only way of working is to burn tokens, and you're like, yeah, of course, like burning tons of tokens is great. But like for the real world and people living in it, like those tokens aren't free, and there are better ways to work than to just burn tokens and I hope you get to a good answer. Like you can plan better, you can think through like what am I giving the model? And I wrote that I was talking recently to one of the engineers at SourceGraph about this, and because their philosophy is always like more tokens is better, and I'm like, well, like there is a balance because like efficiency does matter. Like if you're and efficiency, and also like asking yourself a question like, if I'm burning tokens, like, is it because I'm lazy and I want the model to do more work for me, or is it because I am really getting better results? And sometimes, like burning more tokens does lead to better results, but often it's just because people are lazy and they don't want to do the work of planning what they want to put into their prompts and planning their task properly and thinking through, as an engineer, like what it is that I'm trying to solve, like thinking about your problem for a second and just doing that work ahead of time. It makes everything 10 times more efficient for you and for the model. So yeah,
That's
you
right.
got to ask that question.
I like this way of thinking because a lot of times before I'm even getting into Claude Code now, I'm using O3 in like ChatGPT to kind of help me find libraries, do some initial research, so then I can synthesize it before I actually start to vocalize what I really want. And a lot of the
Hmm.
times I don't really know what I want, so I'm going to another model in essence and asking these types of questions. And my favorite part of like an O3 type of thing is this web research type of thing that it can do
Hmm.
simultaneously and kind of speed up that workflow. And so I think that's an interesting approach that no one really talks about in the mainstream. It's like if you want an idea before maybe you put it into Cursor, before you put it into any of these models, it's like use another AI system to help you get some clarity to better kind of focus your outcome or whatever thing that you want to do. And so I feel like that yeah, because there's multiple ways to approach the problem, obviously, and I think experimenting with them is going to be probably the biggest bet right there. What are your thoughts
Yeah.
right now? I know Grok is kind of on the cusp, like tonight at 8 o'clock p.m. Pacific
Oh,
Standard
is that the
Time.
time?
You're going to be like 1 a.m.,
Okay.
right? It's like, um, what do you think is going to be the key here? Because when Grok 3 came out, I was really blown away with like how you can
Yeah.
ask these different questions and stuff and like I guess kind of with that have you noticed like any difference in using extended thinking with Claude Sonnet or any of these like thinking models like have you
Yeah.
yeah
So yeah, so I think the thing with extended thinking, and just to go to Grok also as well, is that I find personally like extended thinking works really well if there's something to think about, which is why I like O3. When you prep your context, you give it a task and it's able to think through the problem that you give it. That's the best way to use them. If you're using a model like Sonnet, like I actually almost never turn on extended thinking, just because I find that like one, it kind of goes in loops a little bit, and two, like it's thinking about stuff before it sometimes even has the relevant context. So just like letting it kind of figure out its context and then solve the problem, or then
Mm,
delegate the thinking to something else. That's also a good way to go. I know Anthropic recently released interleave thinking, and I think Claude Code kind of does this also, where it's able to kind of think between tasks after it's gathered context. Like that can be useful, but generally, I don't find that it adds sufficiently to the results, because you do want to just kind of like let it like work with what it has, find the context, and then kind of organize things. And sometimes just like stopping it and then moving along, and finding more ways to kind of using. I think like this is going to be a thing that's going to be bigger and bigger as time goes on. It's like human in the loop tool calls. So
okay.
like it's making a tool call, having the human kind of look at the tool call, put some thoughts into it, and then in the response it'll see what you said, and then it can keep going and kind of redirecting it. So that kind of
ooh
workflow of like
ooh I like
steering the model
this.
as it runs, like that's like a good way I think that we'll kind of progress. um
You heard it here
so
first
before I
before Andre
continue, I
Kaparthe talks
just
about it.
yeah. So before I get here, I just wanted to say there's some folks in the chat I was seeing, they're asking for discount codes, and I just want to say, like, anyone in the stream right now, if by the end of the stream, I'm gonna put up a code for anyone here. I think I'll name it like Ray Fernando 15, and anyone will have 15% off, and you can pick whatever sub. It'll only be good for the day. But yeah, everyone in the chat, Ray Fernando 15. If you stay to the end, like you'll be able to get that discount.
Let's
so,
go. Yeah. Let's go. A lot of people are asking for the code. So definitely, especially my members here, they're like, we want to get cooking with this. And thank you so much for providing that. I think that's just super duper fire. And the chat's going crazy right now.
That's great.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And now Grok, so Grok is coming out today, probably. We'll see what happens if it actually ships. So the thing, and that it remains to be seen. Will Grok, what kind of a model is it? Is it going to be like a deep thinking model? Is it going to be the kind of model that you prompt like O3 or O1 Pro? And is it going to be more of a tool calling model like Claude? And I don't think it's going to be a tool calling model. That's just kind of the way I think about it. So it'll be the kind of model that you really want to prep your prompts for and let it think deep for. And I think that's fine. I think Claude is really specialized in the tool calling workflow, and people really like that. But I really encourage people to try these other models and find ways, just going to Grok or chatgpt.com or even AI Studio and just prompting the model in a chat flow. You're able to get a lot done with these models, even outside of a tool calling environment. And I know everyone's so used to just letting the AI do everything for them, but that's very recent, and it's often still not the best way. And sometimes it's not even faster, because the model is going to go off for a long time. It's going to make a bunch of stuff that you have to review. And then some of it's good, some of it's not good. But I often find this, and a lot of folks will say this as well, is when you're solving a problem, they'll say, okay, I'm going to give it to Claude, even Opus or Sonnet in Claude Code. It'll say, fix my problem. Or then you ask the same problem to O3, and O3 will be like, okay, actually this one line of code, you just change that, your problem solved, and it's right. And then Claude will be like, okay, I engineered 15 classes for you. Here's all the files. It solves your problem perfectly. And you're like, okay, well, great, but that's
Certainly.
all this code I have to review now.
You're so right.
Absolutely.
Wait, there's got to be a better way. Absolutely. I can do that better.
Yeah. And spawns 8 subtasks and just runs off for you for 10 hours.
Yesterday, I was live doing that with Claude Code. And literally, I have a value that's displayed for my backend as far as how many minutes the user has left in their actual plan. And so, in the UI, there's 4 or 5 different places where that shows up. And Claude Code's I can apply the math.round function to all these different places in your code. I'm like, this is super sus, bro. What is you please rethink this whole thing. It's oh, you're right. You are so right. I was like, bro, you're just gassing me right now. I feel like I'm smarter than the model.
But then you have to rethink, and now it's stuck on that. And so I think there's a shortcut in Claude Code you can do where it's escape, and then it lets you roll back and you can pick up the chat from right before.
Bro,
so it's
what?
A nice way to kind of trim some of the content. Yeah.
Oh, so if you hit the up arrow too, is that what it does? It trims it? If you hit up and go back?
Yeah, you can move up to kind of go there, but escape lets you kind of start from a different point and kind of fork the chat from there, which is super powerful.
Bruh, how did I not know this?
Well, what's nice with the Claude UI too is you can just go ahead and, if you're on Claude Desktop, you just go through the chat and you just hit edit
pencil,
and just let it stop. Yeah, and just start from there.
Oh my god, damn! My mind is blown with escape. So context rot. We heard about also human in the loop tool calls, right? I feel like no one's talking about that. You're hearing it here first on the live stream. You're going to be telling your friends about this. Yo, the future is all about human in the loop tool calls. We said it here first before the big guys saying it. Well, basically what we're acknowledging is that at this present time right now, the language models still have a lot of work to do to figure these things out. And maybe nerding out just a little bit more, because I love talking about language models and things. So in this extended thinking or reasoning type of stuff, is it really just a shortcut of pre-trained thoughts or synthetic data? So if something has never been reasoned over and never been trained on, then going forward, the likelihood of it kind of coming up with a new novel reasoning is actually really low. Is that kind of what I understand? Unless it's seen something.
Yeah, I mean the key thing, and this is what is like steps up O3 from like O1, for instance, is that they gave it like way more problems to think about and solve, like while it's training. So you train the large model, and then you go through post training, and then you have like a multi-turn chatbot, and then you want to add reasoning on it, and you basically put it in the gym, and you're like, okay, here's a bunch of different problems to think about, and then you basically you let it like work on the problem, and when it gets it right, you keep that data, and when it gets it wrong, you throw it out. And so then it's like a way to kind of discover a bunch of extra data to train the model on these extra problems. And so if you have a problem where like the model was able to work through it in the reasoning, like it's going to work really well in the field. But like again, like it's TBD if like to what degree fully truly novel problems are going to be doable by these models, because it's still it's still so early with all of this. And I do think like if there's insufficient data, they're going to suck. Like I've tried O3 on some like really low level problems, and they just hallucinate everything, and that's just not it's just not helpful. And then sometimes the RL and the reasoning like kind of leads it to hallucinate more. Like it makes it think that it solved things that it didn't. And when you're multi-turn too, like a lot of the time, like these reasoning tokens are lost. So like as you ask the model to do something again, like it has no idea what it already thought about before. So like there's this whole thing that like it's kind of like an inefficient hack at the moment to kind of work through these tricky problems. But it does like solve things really well in certain cases. Like O3 is an incredibly good engineer model, and it's able to that's why it's able to come up with like really succinct solutions, because it's able to really think about them for a while, and then it kind of throws out the old one and it backtracks and it thinks through a better way, and then you end up with something really small, and you're like, wow, like this one line of code is all it took to solve this problem. Versus Claude just kind of going off the rails and just moving forward like a like a race car, just kind of just go.
Yeah. So what is your go-to stack? Like Eric wakes up in the morning, you're writing
Yeah.
repo prompt code. Like what, take me
Mhm.
through like what is your day to day?
Yeah.
What AIs windows do you have open? All that stuff for folks who want to
Yeah,
kind of.
yeah. So, I mean, today it was interesting. I was actually starting off because I just signed up for Sentry. So I don't know if you all, I mean, I signed up for this new thing called Seer in Sentry. I've had Sentry for a bit. But so what's cool with that is that like, so say people are using my app and there's like a stall, UI stall, or like a bug that appeared, that gets sent to Sentry. It gets like some info about the code. And then there's this AI model Seer that will look for root causes for that issue. And so now, like lately, what I've been doing with that, like I started this kind of today, is like I start with that, and then I basically be like, okay, like what did Seer find? It found like there's all these issues. So then I go open RepoPrompt, I put that in the app, and I run the context builder, which like automatically selects the files that are relevant to the task, and then I just feed that to O3. And I let it cook. And so I've been just kind of assembly lining problems to O3 Pro, to kind of think about and solve these problems, like evaluate the problem. Here's the context. Here's the issue. And then go from there. So like, I think like just starting a problem in O3, like if you have the sufficient context, like as always, like the preferred way to go. And I do like having ChatGPT for that, because you can just open up a bunch of threads, just like set up your prompts, kind of put them out and let them cook for a while, and you kind of just like assembly line them. And then once you've got that, then you can kind of turn to Claude, and either Claude Desktop or Claude Code, and then kind of have it like look through the solution, like evaluate, is it exhaustive? Is it sufficiently exhaustive? Like, does it affect every situation, every case here? And then sometimes you can kind of work with that. But you want to try and find a combination of these tools. I do think a Claude Pro subscription at $20 a month right now is like really good value, especially now. Like I'm finding with the RepoPrompt tools, like you're able to do a lot with it. Like in Claude Code, like it won't last that long because Claude Code burns tokens like you've never seen. But like with the RepoPrompt tools in Claude Desktop, I'm able to kind of get a lot of usage out of it. Even
Oh,
I'm on $100 a month right now, but $20 a
yeah.
month like goes a long way.
Oh,
And then O3 over the API, like it's really good value. Like we're spending all these money on subscriptions, but like it's getting to the point where API calls, if you're doing them right, like it doesn't have to cost that much. Like people are used to like seeing, if they look at Cursor usage-based billing, like O3 is expensive in there because it's making so many tool calls and doing so much stuff. But like you don't have to do that. Like you can just you can use RepoPrompt, or you can just go on like your own client. Like there's like plenty, like LibreChat or whatever. You just put in an API key, and you can just use O3, and it's really not that expensive. Like $20 a month of API usage on O3 goes a long way. Like you can do a lot with that,
Wow.
because of since the price drop. So you don't even need a subscription if you don't want to. And like honestly, I would recommend people like try and resist the urge to kind of like have an agent do everything, because like you will understand more what is happening if you don't. You're able to move more deliberately, and if you're reviewing every response, like you're just kind of more in control, and you're able to kind of vet more of what is going on in your code base. And I find that's really important.
That's solid advice because I remember like I hadn't touched my code base the other day, like a UI part for a while. And, I was doing that stuff on vacation. And so when I got back, I have my founder's hat on, right? Like I'm doing media, I'm like taking care of family, I'm doing all these different things. And I got back, I was like, oh my God, where, and so like one of my latest hygiene tips has just been writing documentation really for myself. So like
That's great.
after I do a whole bunch of chats and like before I clear it out, it's like, can you just write some documentation on this entire chat and summarize like
Yeah,
what we did? And so that way I can kind of review it back, and it helps me sort of get up to speed later on in the code base, because sometimes I'll forget or whatever. And it's been kind of embarrassing. Like the other day, I forgot to like that you can actually just add one line to the Stripe checkout and it literally will produce the coupon. And, so I had like the tokens flowing, burning, a bunch of tokens through Claude Max. And it's like, yeah, it's just this one line. It's like, thanks. I could have probably figured that out, but yeah, you know what I mean? So that was an interesting
absolutely.
thing. Yeah. Or just like
Yeah,
with the UI stuff, I forget, with React, like, okay, that's right. I did set up a hook for this. That way I don't have to update these 4 places in the UI. It's all grabbing it from this one hook, which is that, and that value is being pre-filled from there. And so it's like
yeah.
stuff like that. But now that I know it, it's going to be sticking in my head because I learned about it. And I think that happens if people have been like coding their app and not really understanding what the agent is doing. It is actually good to go review the code and play around and see what the inputs and outputs are. And it's okay. I feel like I used to be very embarrassed, especially, being an engineer for many years. Now, like letting the agents code for me and then now not really understanding what they're doing. And I think what I'm realizing, Eric, is that with a new programming language, I learn better when there's scaffolding up. So if I get an existing
Hmm.
template or GitHub repo, I'm going to learn the language a lot faster if I start poking at it, start sending it inputs, start changing code, start adding features. And then sure, it could be ugly at the beginning, but all the gaps that filled in with my knowledge and understanding, what's actually moving or debugging the app actually gives me more clarity than if I were to just
Absolutely.
study it. And that's just my way of learning, but that's how I've learned growing up. And I think
No,
that's how
it's a
most
great
people are
way.
learning these days. And I think a lot of people in my streams are learning that way. And yeah, so Repo Prompt, as far as like, is it like subscription based? Kind of give some people a little bit of background of like maybe what they should be expecting when they're going to go check out your app here.
Yeah. I think like what you just said is great. Like taking the time to kind of read through what's been done, to like document your learnings, like keep in mind things that are changing around in your code when the agent's making changes. Like it's really good. And learning by doing, like scaffolding is great to get started. Like working on products, like projects, like having a goal in mind of what you want to accomplish, and being able to have that like dopamine hit of like a change kind of being applied right away. It's super helpful to learn, like when you're that, like I find learning it works best if you try to turn it into a game and you try to get those dopamine hits as often as possible, because like if you're not enjoying it, you're not like enjoying the struggle. Like it makes it harder to motivate yourself to struggle and to try. And and that's the biggest thing right now with people learning to code at all. Like that's why I feel like it's a little tricky for juniors who are starting out their career right now, because like it's so easy not to struggle. Like it's so easy to just default to asking an AI model to solve problems for them. And when I started my career, like the thing that like one bit of feedback I got often, like well early on with one on my first job, was like I was struggling in a code base and I asked a lot of questions, and I was like asking like kind of too many questions to the senior guy above me, and he was like, dude, you gotta struggle a bit more to figure it out first. And that stuck with me, and like I really like kept on it. And so I would try and like really struggle before I had to go and look for help. And I think like that's a practice if you're really starting out and you want to like learn, like try and struggle before you turn to the automated tool, to the easy solution, because that's how you're going to understand what's happening. And like, when you're doing that, um you're just going to be able to write better prompts, write better, understand your problems better. You're going to be able to like figure out debugging more easily, because you're able to understand how the code flows and where the ins and outs go. And you'll be able to use that context in your prompts, and you'll get, just overall much better products.
That's a really good point. I feel like that's not said enough. And it's just what you'll actually start to discover is that there's a lot of content already on YouTube that kind of describes certain debugging tasks. So as you enter this journey, instead of relying on the agent for debugging, you're like, how do I look this up in the shell command? If you just type that into YouTube, YouTube is great because it's going to start recommending videos after that. Like after that first video watch on debugging, it's going to be like, here's how to use the shell and how to pass these commands to understand what the shell is doing. It's like, wait, you can pass in -H into any command and it's going to give you this automated help menu? I had no clue. It's like, and then you start to actually get into whatever stage that you're at in your coding career. You're going to learn so much more just from doing that type of thing. It's like, that's the biggest unlock. And yeah, don't be afraid, I guess, for anyone who's coding. And if you don't know the answer, it's okay to use the AI model, but maybe also try not using it too, and just doing a plain old Google search and seeing what comes up, right? So this is kind of like maybe we're going to call this the raw movement. Can you just go raw dog it and like just use Google, right? Like
No, that's great. The problem now is like Google's results are super polluted at this point, so it's kind of tricky. Like we're getting into a tough world now, so that even that's kind of like out of the window. But like, just trying to solve things a little bit more
right.
raw before, like, run the program, like read through what's happening, either attach a debugger, put some logs, like write some prints yourself. Like printing is easy to do. You just type print or log or console log or whatever language you're using, and you'll be able to see like, okay, that's where that is, and you'll get a trace. And you know what, like the funny thing with that is that like language models love logs. They'll eat that shit up. So you give them lots of logs with your problem, they will understand exactly what's happening, and so will you, which is really helpful.
That's hilarious. So yeah, for those folks who don't know, Eric is the founder of RepoPrompt, and we've basically had this beautiful discussion just now, kind of talking, learning out a little about language models, about RepoPrompt is kind of like what it's doing as a high level. And what I'm planning to do on my future live streams is going to be using the app and kind of walking you through some of this workflow, because I am super impressed of this new MCP feature and watching it perform like we did earlier in the show. And if you're going to be watching this, I'm going to have timestamps so that you can kind of follow along backwards, because this show is also going to be sent out on YouTube. And just it's so amazing just watching Claude code and just talk to RepoPrompt and say, hey, go do the thing. And it's like, oh, O3 is smart. I'm going to let O3 figure out the things. And then it's like, it's not using any of those tokens. RepoPrompt is then using its own agentic sauce inside of RepoPrompt to then grab the code that it needs to give O3, do its thing, and then it sends the results back up. And Claude is basically saying, okay, cool, task is done. And it just keeps going, it keeps going, it keeps going. Amazing, man. Wow.
I want to just chime in, by the way. I just made that code live, Fernando 15. So if you're watching the stream, so today through tomorrow, like you can go ahead and use that if you want 15% off any of the subs. So you can get it off the monthly, and it'll work for a full year, or any of the other tiers. So yeah, and if you're using this and you do want to give it a try, like please do like reach out to me either on Twitter, or I'm on Discord a lot. Like I really pride myself in customer support. Like I know some of these things are a little daunting. The tool can be a little complex for new users, and something I'm working on. But like it's very powerful. Someone's asking, can you just use RepoPrompt with only a Claude codes with a Claude Desktop? Like, yeah, like if you have the subscription with RepoPrompt, you can use the MCP server. But without it too, like you don't need the MCP server. You can just build your prompts. And what's cool with the XML copy feature is you can actually just have it like output a structured XML, and it will apply the edits automatically. So on the free tier of RepoPrompt, you can go ahead and use Claude Desktop on $20 a month and get some work done. It can create files, edit files, everything you need. You just kind of in there. There are some limits on prompt sizes, but like you can get a lot done with it. That's the clipboard XML flow. So if you're trying to use, just minimize your spending, the free tier is great. If you want to go a little bit further and automate more, like there's the pro license, which gets you the MCP and a bunch of other things. All the power tools are there. But yeah, you don't need to spend any money to kind of get started. And AI Studio is another way to kind of get a lot of use out of that. Like AI Studio is great and it's free. So yeah. So yeah, thanks for signing up. Like I see some folks already did. So that's really great. But yeah, ask me questions. Like if you're running into issues, you're running into anything, like please tweet at me, DM me. It's all good. I'm gonna answer you. I have no problems with that. Like I'm still like small enough that like I can talk to people directly. Yeah.
That's what's really nice. It's just literally organic engineering right here. And speaking of organic, we have our own Alex Volkov. If you don't know, now you know. ThursdAI, tune in tomorrow. This boy drops knowledge every single Thursday on ThursdAI. They do live streams now. They are also on X Spaces. They have all of the top talent in AI. Whenever something's going on, they'll be on the show. So with Grok dropping, he's going to have the people who made the model. Like they get into technical details. And I would highly suggest, especially if you're into any of this AI coding stuff, definitely check out Alex Volkov. And then you can see that ThursdAI is the name of the show. They're also on YouTube. Make sure you subscribe to them. Super high quality content. I love what they do. That's actually where I catch up on my AI news every week. There's also a newsletter you can subscribe to as well to make sure you kind of check that out. To me, I was like, oh, there's a new, they talk about open source models. They just all of the AI technical juices. And sometimes some of those weeks are pretty packed. But you can always get the TLDR, and even if you're super busy, just you kind of have to keep a pulse on this. And that's kind of where I actually keep my sanity. So it's like sometimes some weeks are so crazy with information. It's like, okay, let me just see what the TLDR was. What did I miss? Was there a new vision model that I missed? Was there something really interesting? Definitely super cracked. So Alex Volkov, ThursdAI. I gotta actually have him on the show. It'd be really fun to have him on. Yeah, because like there's just so much sauce. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I'm grateful. I was on his show when O3 Pro dropped, and that was a lot of fun. Yeah, it's really great to see him kind of hopping around here. The X kind of AI community is not even that big, and it's cool to see, like so much information sharing, and yeah, it's really good.
That's awesome. Eric, thank you so much for tuning in. And also thank you for basically letting everyone use the Fernando 15 coupon code. If you wanted to sign up for RepoPrompt, make sure you just drop in that little coupon code and you get a 15% discount. Ends today. So if you're watching the stream on the replay, make sure you sign up ASAP to take advantage of that. But by the way, Eric is very approachable, which is really awesome. It's still a small organic thing. And if you have any questions, definitely reach out, ask any questions. There's a Discord as well in his community. And if you just go to repoprompt.com, you can join the Discord and have a conversation with other people who are using RepoPrompt, which can be super helpful because everyone is trading tips on, what the latest things happening. You can file bug reports there as well. And because this is Eric's full-time job now, he's able to do that. Previously, used to be a staff researcher at Unity, right?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, been able to do this full-time now. It's really nice. I really, I'm really grateful for that opportunity from the folks that are supporting the app and using it. And I just want to mention, like the Discord, even if you're not using the app or you're on a different platform or whatever, like there's some really smart people in there, and I learn from them every day. And there's some good discussions on MCPs. There's some great workflows in there that people are coming up with. Some folks are like building tools for themselves that they share that help you automate a lot of stuff. Like there's some really smart folks in there, and I'm a little biased because it is the RepoPrompt community, but like I really love those folks in there, and it's worth learning from them. So yeah, definitely join if you just want to hang out and see what's going on there. So
definitely. Thank you so much, man. It's super pleasure to have you on. For those folks who are tuning in, make sure you check out the timestamps. They will be all below. You can rewatch the stream, share this with some friends, let some folks know. There's going to be a bunch of clippable moments in here with a bunch of cool stuff. And also thanks for the support for everyone who's been joining in, who are members of Fernando 1337, just by joining in on the YouTube channel. So definitely appreciate that. And I will see you tomorrow at 9 a.m. This is my summer of streaming. Depending on when Grok drops or whatever, I might even do a surprise live stream and play with it live, but definitely for sure tomorrow at 9 a.m. I will be live and
let Ray sleep.
Fun. Let Ray sleep. All right, y'all. Thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time. Peace out, y'all. Thanks, Eric.
Cheers.
Cheers.